Boy, I sure do love the Carnival Night music from Sonic the Hedgehog 3, released February 1994. I cannot wait to hear the music again in the new remake of the game on Sonic Origins. We can't have anything nice. Have you ever wondered why Sonic 3 and Knuckles doesn't have as many re-releases as the first two games? Well, there's more to it than you might think. Back in the 90s, Sonic was one of, if not the biggest character in gaming, possibly even more than Mario. Sega, the creators of Sonic, were well known for trying to pick up on the most recent trends and incorporating them into their games. That's actually how Sonic himself was created. Sega looked at Nintendo's success with their mascot and made one for themselves. They made him appealing to the average teen/preteen in the 90s by giving him a huge attitude. They gave him the attitude of, and I quote, Bill Clinton.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
They wanted to appeal to the Western market, so it makes sense, but it's just really funny to think about. And they gave the character shoes based off of Michael Jackson's. We'll talk about him in a minute. All of this really did pay off in making Sonic popular at the time. The struggling Sega Genesis boomed in sales once the first Sonic game was released. Sega knew that from now on they needed to reach an older audience than Nintendo, and went all out with this in the 90s. They already did this before all of this, but this is when they realized it could be really successful for them. In 1990, Sega made a deal with one of the biggest names in music ever, Michael Jackson, and released Michael Jackson's Moonwalker on the Sega Genesis. The idea of a Michael Jackson platformer where he moonwalks and does dance moves as his attacks is funny as hell, and I think everybody in the world needs to own this game. This game was based off of a movie with the same title where he has to stop his friends, who are little kids, from getting addicted to drugs by this villain guy. Michael Jackson is insane. What is this movie? Also, the synth Sega Genesis remixes of some of Michael Jackson's best music is actually some of my favorite music ever coming from a Sega Genesis. Take a listen. But with a clear relationship with Michael Jackson himself, Sega knew they could do more. During the late development of Sonic 3, behind-the-scenes meeting between Michael Jackson and Sega officials took place where they made a deal for Michael to make music for the upcoming Sonic 3. Most likely. We don't know for sure. Let me explain. Michael Jackson's song Jam and Carnival Night Zone have eerily similar sounding music, and actually use the same 6-chord progression and using the same jam sound effect. As well as the music from Ice Cap Zone sharing many similarities between songs Who Is It and Smooth Criminal. And lastly, looking at the credits, we see, he's in jail now. But also the names of the people that worked on the music in the credits had all worked with Michael Jackson at some point. Not to sound like a conspiracy theorist or anything, but with all this evidence in place, I think it's fair to say that Michael Jackson had an involvement with Sonic 3's music. But you may wonder why Michael Jackson himself wasn't credited anywhere for his involvement with this game. Take a look at what year this game was released. Most likely, due to the allegations brought to Jackson at the time, Sega didn't want anything to do with him, especially regarding Sonic. However, even if Michael wasn't credited for his music being in the game, many of his associates were. For the PC port of Sonic 3 at the time, the music for zones Carnival Night, Ice Cap, and Launch Base had all been changed. Originally thought to be the music that Michael Jackson had specifically worked on. But later it was discovered that it may have rather been that PCs at the time could not have been able to produce a sound from these zones. Personally, I found it a bit odd that the ones theorized that Michael had worked on were the only ones changed, which is why I think it might be a mix of both reasons. For many years, there's a mystery if Michael Jackson and his team actually worked on Sonic 3, but the fact that Sonic 3 wasn't being re-released with any Sonic collections all but proves it. The going theory is that Sonic Team didn't want to pay the money to license Michael Jackson's music, so instead chose to not re-release Sonic 3 and Knuckles. But in 2021, Sonic Origins, a collection with widescreen HD remakes of the classic Sonic games, was announced. People wanted to know what they were going to do with Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Going into the release, people had theorized that Sega finally paid the licensing fees to use the music, or if they just used the PC port music. They used the latter. Come on, man. I understand it could have been a hefty fee to get the music, but tell me it wouldn't be worth it. Sonic Origins didn't have a great reputation because of some of the slight issues with the sound effects and music not playing properly and some other things. I don't really know. I like the collection. I honestly think this stuff would have been mostly ignored if they put the Michael Jackson music in it, because that was the main reason why people didn't like this collection. And it's a shame because the original music was awesome and their replacements just aren't. My main problem with it is that it just sounds so cheap. Like, it's trying to be the original, but takes away all the stuff that made it good, you know? Otherwise, the collection was fine, right? Poor and muffled audio. Down music and visuals. Drop dash not working correctly. Physics being slightly different in Sonic 3. No arrow key mapping on PC. Tails takes longer to catch up to the player. Sonic doesn't tuck me into bed. Knuckles AI being funky. Switch version was weird. They didn't make Tails hot enough.